What is happening? Today is Friday, February the 23rd. This is the Dynasty Dugout Show, and we're going to talk baseball. There is a live game on right now. There's several games going on at 3, but there is a game happening right now as the Red Sox are facing Northeastern University, which is actually home to one of the top draft prospects for 2024. That's Mike Sirota. So I'm curious to see Mike Sirota play today against some major league, I say professional level pitching. I think the Red Sox have pretty much rolled out a minor league starting lineup for the most part, which it makes sense. But I'm curious to see like professional pitching, Mike Sirota. This should be a lot of fun. We've had several pieces of news to cover today. Obviously, the Ricky Tiedemann news. Ricky was supposed to throw today, and then ultimately he was scratched due to hamstring issues, which it's better than it could be. He's dealt with arm issues so long. I have been pretty adamant against Ricky Tiedemann due to the lingering elbow and shoulder issues that are going on there. So at least this news is pretty I would say it's positive. There's no positive news when you're scratched from a start due to a hamstring issue, but still it could be a little worse. Marco Luciano is dealing with a hamstring issue. Young-Hoo Lee, he is dealing with side soreness, so he is out for the opener on Saturday for the Giants. So the injury news is flowing in, and that's kind of to be expected. Now with games starting, we will get more information, and we'll know more about the injuries. We'll know more about what's going on with these players. And ultimately, yeah, it's not going to be fun, but it is what it is. So we have to look at some of that news, take it for what it's worth. Vaughn Grissom's dealing with hamstring injury, so that's no fun. Be his first season with the Red Sox. We have Jarren Duran, who's being held out of some spring games due to a toe injury dating back to last year. Kerry Carpenter, hamstring. What is the deal with all these hamstring injuries? It seems like every single person is dealing with some sort of hamstring issue. So this is interesting to follow, but there's some news and notes that you need to know for today. The first pitch is happening for the Red Sox games in about 1 minute now. So if anything happens there, we'll talk about it. Maybe at the end of this show, we'll hop over on playback and we'll watch some of it and just chat together. So if you want to do that, feel free. We're also streaming. If you want to interact with the show, go to playback.tv/the Dynasty Dugout, and you can chat with us, ask questions. I'll be happy to answer any question that you have. But we are here to talk Milwaukee Brewers top prospects. The Brewers system is a ton of fun. They have a ton of big names at the top. We know they recently acquired Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. A lot of fun as well. And I know for Brewers fans, it's especially tough to see Corbin Burnes traded, to see not as competitive of a team on the field this year. But I do know that the farm system is absolutely loaded. So take that for what it's worth. I know it's not a product on the major league field, but these guys are coming. And starting off with Jackson Chourio, who we know is going to be with the big league team this year because he signed a massive extension. He got an 8-year, $82 million deal. It was the biggest deal for someone who has never debuted in the majors. We've seen these deals happen every once in a while. Also happened with Colt Keith this offseason. But Chourio's deal is the biggest of any of those that has happened. Jackson Chourio does a lot of things well. He really began to jump onto radars in 2022. 18-year-old who skipped complex ball. He headed straight to single A Carolina, where he was rather dominant for an 18-year-old full season ball. Like, he was so good. He made it to double A in 2022. And between 3 levels, going from single A, high A to double A, he slashed 288, 342, 538, firmly putting him among the top prospects in baseball. He hit 20 home runs, stole 16 bases in 99 games that year. And then 2023, obviously the expectations are through the roof when we're looking at Jackson Chourio because of how good he was at such a young age. But there was a couple caveats and factors here. First, you have the fact that he was playing in Double-A in the Southern League. That league used the tacky ball in the first half, and it clearly affected Chourio. First half, he slashed 249, 304, 410 with 11 home runs and 23 stolen bases. So it was fine, but not the kind of slash line you want him to put up. The swing and miss issues really stem from changeups. When you look at the data on it, it's interesting because everybody thinks about the riding fastballs with the tacky ball, but also it really allowed players to enhance their changeup. Like pitchers were throwing these really good changeups, and Chourio struggled with that. But then the pre-tacked ball left in the second half. His contact rate in the first half was 75%, jumped to 81% in the second half. And then he matched his way to AAA. The second half slash line was 324, 379, 538 with 11 home runs in 57 games. So rather impressive numbers there. He puts up really big exit velocities already for such a young age. Had an average EV right around 91 miles an hour last year, which is impressive. His ninth percentile near 105, so well above average compared to major league standards already. And then you look at the contact skills, they're pretty solid too. Obviously, the jump that they made in the second half was huge. He ran a hard hit rate of 55% last year. I look at all these things and I'm like, okay, this is pretty impressive. So the thing to watch here is Chourio is rather aggressive. He makes contact, but the aggressiveness is an interesting point because he chased at a 35% clip, which is very high, actually. You want to be 30% or below. And Chourio, 35%. But in AAA, just 22% chase rate out of the zone. I'm interested. I should probably do a deeper dive because the ABS certainly affected that. We saw walk rates go up for pitchers and hitters, obviously, in AAA. But the strike zone was much tighter when they used the ABS system. So that's something worth noting with Jackson Chourio. If you're having sky high expectations right now for 2024, I'd probably pump the brakes a little bit because we're talking about such a young kid. I mean, 19, 20-year-old this year, there's going to be bumps in the road. He's going to be a great player long-term, but here's the problem. If he comes up and he's just okay, everybody's just going to flip out and just be completely done. Not completely done, but we saw what happened with several other guys. Like Jordan Walker was all the hype last spring training. And then after Jordan Walker came up and was good, I mean, the dude ran like a 116 WRC plus in the majors. And people were just like, It's funny how high the expectations are for top prospects. And it's sad that we put those kind of levels and expectations on them, but it just is what it is. So Jackson Chourio is going to be a great player long-term. He's going to hit for power. He's going to steal bases. But if he hits 18 home runs and steals 30 bases this year, and he puts up like a 240 average, you know what's crazy? I think people are going to be disappointed in that. Hopefully you're not, but I do believe that it's going to be some ups and downs for Chourio because he's so young and he still has a lot of improvement to make. Not to say he's not a great player. He's one of the top prospects in the game. But there are still things that he needs to work on. But so with that being said, by far the top prospect in this system. This next guy is a lot of fun too, and that's Jacob Misiorowski. He is absolutely nasty. And I'm going to share a clip that our friend Beck, Upper Beck, posted. He had a whiff reel of him he posted yesterday that's just extremely nasty. When you watch him pitch, it's funky. I mean, there's nothing conventional about Jacob Misiorowski, but he is just so impressive with what he does on the mound. And let's watch some of these whiff highlights, and I'll kind of chat about him a little bit. I mean, the fastball is incredibly good. It averaged over 98 miles an hour this season. High IVB numbers, 12 inches of run on the pitch. Very good offering. Firmly plus or better when we're looking at Misiorowski. Big stuff there. I mean, you can just see him just blowing the fastball by hitters. He has a nasty breaking ball as well. The slider sometimes morphs into a cutter. It sits in the low 90s, which is wild. Gets up to 94 on occasion. It's kind of inconsistent in the shape that it is. Sometimes you're getting more of a slider, sweepy shape. Sometimes it's shorter break. It's like a more of a cutter. But that's not to say that like it's not a good pitch. But the curveball you can see in this film right here, the biggest swing and miss pitch for him this year. Curveball set in the mid to upper 80s, ton of downward action, but also sweeping action too. You see that pitch, and it gets a lot of sweep on it, like 13 to 15 inches is rather impressive when you're getting that kind of downward movement also from the curveball. Gave hitters nightmares. When you have to prepare for that fastball and also that curveball, it's really tough for hitters. So Jacob Misiorowski is an incredible arm. He flashes a changeup on occasion. It sits in the lower 90s, but it's not often used. Really, what you look and see is what you get. I mean, he's tall and lanky. He's got a really tough release point to pick up. He's got some of the best pure stuff in the minors. But the interesting thing to watch, the strike throwing, the consistency with strike throwing and the walk rate. He had a walk rate near 14% last year. I'd be lying to you if I said there was no reliever risk here with Jacob Misiorowski, because there could be. I'm not going to completely rule that out by any means, that there's not risk. And there's risk with every pitching prospect. So take it for what it's worth. Some guys have more risk than others. But I would say Jacob Misiorowski's not even injury risk, but bullpen risk is kind of heightened in a way, because there are some concerns with just the strike throwing ability. It's just a funky mechanics. I mean, there's a lot of effort with the delivery. I fear injury risk too. So I love him. He's a lot of fun, big upside arm that you want to dream on, but know that he's not a perfect future starting pitcher by any means, but who is, by the way? No pitching prospect is. And I think that we all know that. We got a question from Playback. Jesse C. Lee asked, does Miz get a call to the bigs this year? I'm not ruling it out. I think down the stretch, I wouldn't be shocked at all, because here's what I think happens. I think that we see him ultimately probably start the season in the minors, work his innings there, and they probably are conservative on his innings. And then I think they bring him up later in the season to get him some seasoning, but keep his rookie eligibility. Why? Because if you go into 2025 and you plan to have Jacob Misiorowski with the major league team, then there's that opportunity for him to earn what they call the prospect promotion incentive, meaning that if he was to win Rookie of the Year, then ultimately that means that the Brewers get another pick. So we got another question about the Ortiz trade, Tyler Black. We'll get to that in just a minute, because I do think that's a really good point to bring up. And how is that going to be handled? We'll see. But let's talk about Brock Wilken, who I absolutely love. Brock Wilken. He is a masher. What he did at Wake Forest, I think, was very underrated. And he came up and just dominated this year in pro ball. It wasn't like there were, any like stepping stones. Like, he was just moving through the system. He started, he made all the way to Double-A, and here's a Double-A grand slam that he hit that we'll watch right here, where he just hit the ground running. I mean, he absolutely smokes that ball on a line and just absolutely drilled something behind the wall. I can't even tell what that was back there, but it hit something pretty hard on a line. He put up some pretty gaudy exit velocities. Must have just been a net back there to protect it from going into those trees. Maybe just not their property or something. But Brock Wilken, awesome bat. I mean, the power was evident. Hit 31 home runs last season at Wake. He hit 71 for his Wake career in 821 plate appearances. And for the year, he hit 345, 506, 807. There were some concerns about the hit tool. He can get a little passive at times and just getting deep into counts, and it leads to some strikeouts. But I think the OBP speaks volume of, what he's going to be potentially. And all of that just translated over to professional ball too, because after he had made it to Double-A, he combined for a slash line of 285, 414, 473. When you look at the numbers, he did not chase at all. At Wake, chased just 11% of pitches out of the zone, which was one of the lowest chase rates in college baseball last year. Contact rate of 77% was pretty good. It only dropped down to 75% last year in pro ball. So that's obviously worth noting too, that there wasn't that big of a drop off in the contact rates going to pro ball, which I think is pretty significant. Obviously didn't chase much. The slash of 285, 414, 473 was pretty good. And there's no denying the power. I mean, we're looking last year with Metal at a 95 mile an hour average EV and a 108 90th percentile. Obviously, you're going to see regression with wood bat, but still firmly plus or better power. And, I think that 70 grade might not be crazy to even talk about here when we're looking at the potential power output. Wilkin, incredible bat. So he's going to be a big time guy. Obviously, he's available in FYPDs. If you got him, you got him. If not, maybe try to trade for him because I still think his value goes up. Let's get to that trade because Joey Ortiz is actually my 4th ranked prospect in the system. And Joey Ortiz can mash. You look at the numbers and you think, well, maybe, I don't know, like what kind of powers he actually get to. But Joey Ortiz does so many things well. He improved significantly last year, and he was just dominant. I saw him several times live. I got him hitting a massive home run off of Max Fried on a pitch that Fried located pretty well. I'll show you this. Fried was making a rehab start in Gwinnett, and I'm at the game. And then all of a sudden, you see Joey Ortiz come up. And, I love Ortiz. So watching pretty intently, anyway, I'm tracking Max Fried's pitches, and here he goes. I thought this was a pretty fine located pitch, but Ortiz goes down and away and pulled it and just absolutely mashed it. He hit 2 home runs this game. He hit 1 in another game in Gwinnett. And Gwinnett's not like a big hitter's park by any means, but he just showed what he was capable of. And really, you look at the data and it's pretty good too. I mean, he fought through injuries this past year. He still put up a 121 WRC plus over 389 plate appearances. He made his major league debut. He's a defensive wizard at shortstop. So he's obviously got the glove to play anywhere. And that's the interesting thing. Where does he play in Milwaukee? I think he could play second. I think he could play third. It will be interesting to watch where he plays in the field. But I do think the versatility is huge here. The contact rate's really good. 82.5% overall is plus. The zone contact of 90% is like 85th to 90th percentile among all professional hitters. You look and he had a higher exit velocity than anybody in the Orioles system that played in AAA last year. He had a 9th percentile that was above 90 or the 9th percentile, above 105, which was like near Heston Kjerstad range. Kobe Mayo was a little higher, but he had a 5 mile an hour jump in the average EV from 2022 to 2023, which was huge. And I think that's a big sticking point when you look at Joey Ortiz. There's power, there's speed. He's got a good feel to hit. Where does he fit? And how does this affect another guy we're going to talk about in just a second, in Tyler Black? It's a good question. I look at it right now, and I ultimately wonder, how do the Brewers shake this out? Do they trade Willy Adames? I'm not ruling that out. I think that's a real possibility that he's traded and Joey could play shortstop. I'd say right now it lines up with Joey Ortiz at third and Bryce Terang at second. What does that mean for Tyler Black? Well, let's dive in on Tyler Black. I like Black. I mean, he kind of defies pretty much all odds as the kind of hitter that he is. I mean, he's 5'10", 204. He kind of fits a corner infield spot. He's played some corner outfield too, but he's really struggled to find a spot in the field that worked for him. But he's kind of athletic. You look at 5'10", 204, but he's more athletic than that list may suggest. And he has a big leg kick, plenty of moving parts, but it doesn't affect the contact. He had an 80% overall contact rate. He had an in zone contact rate of 87%. The OBP skills are what really stands out here for Tyler Black. And it's that he gets on base at a high clip because he doesn't chase often at all. He had an 18% chase rate last year. Going to post really high OBPs. I think one of the players that probably prospects that boost their value most in an OBP type format for Dynasty or even a redraft league for that matter, the power numbers also took a jump this year. Look at the underlying data. He had just 4 home runs in 2022 between the regular season and the fall league, 18 this year. The exit velocities, they took a big jump, but they're still closer to average. So I'm not putting a huge power projection on Tyler Black. I think 15, maybe 18 home runs is a reasonable expectation for him, but he's going to steal bags. I think he's stole 55 this year, which is crazy, but probably 30 stolen base type, which at a corner infield position is going to play. The question is, how does this impact him this year? You look around at this team, they signed Rhys Hoskins. That takes up the first base spot. You already have a crowded outfield, so if you've been working him at a corner outfield spot, okay, so Christian Yelich is at DH, but you have Sal Frelick, who's going to play. You have Garrett Mitchell, who's going to play, and you have Jackson Chourio, who's going to play. They've been moving around Frelick. Apparently, he's been getting some reps at second and third base, which is interesting. You also have Joey Wiemer, who made some major changes to his swing this offseason. He's got a good glove, and he's got a power speed upside that I know that a lot of teams dream on. So when you look at how does this shake out, it's kind of tough. Where do all these guys fit? I mean, ultimately, we'll see. But right now, I think Tyler Black probably starts the year in AAA unless something happens. Frelick is actually at third base today. Somebody mentioned in the chat. So that's obviously notable. And Beck mentions that we have Black, we have Ortiz, we have Terang, and Monasterio. Only 2 spots for 4 of them, assuming that Willy Adames stays on the roster. Obviously, you'd love for Willy Adames to be traded for pitching, but the Brewers do have some fun pitching talent. This is going to be interesting. I think the Brewers are going to mix and match all year. I don't think they trade Tyler Black personally, but I do think other guys could be traded that could lead to him having a spot eventually. I don't think they keep him down too long, but there's not a ton of spots right now for Tyler Black to fit in, unfortunately. We have a chat from Uncle Ted. He says the Brewers trade Devin Williams to the Dodgers for a lot of talent, promote Joel Payampas, never say his name right, or Abner Uribe to close. Yeah, I mean, it would make logical sense to move Devin Williams, I think, at this point. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I love Abner Uribe personally. I'm getting him in every draft and hold pretty late. So, yeah, I mean, that'd be fun to see either of those guys in the closer role. Uribe is so much fun. I saw him in the AFL. He's a blast to follow. And then we have another chat. Sounds like the Brewers are going to have a Reds type issue with the potential talent. That's absolutely true. And he says a good problem for the org, tough for fantasy dynasty. Yeah, it's right. This is a great problem for Milwaukee to have a lot of these guys ready and a lot of talent. But I don't know. It's interesting to see how this is going to shake out. I'll get to DL Hall in just a moment. Uncle Ted, thanks for the chat there. Yeah, this is a fun system that has guys that are ready. But this guy that I'm going to talk about next, he's not close to ready, but that's Luis Lara, who is a ton of fun. He's smaller. He's kind of on the Jackson Chourio path. He went straight from the DSL to full season ball this year. He spent the entire season as an 18-year-old. So he was 5'6" when he was first signed. That was his list height. He's now closer to 5'9". You won't see that listed on most places, but closer to 5'9". So that's a significant jump for an 18-year-old. The contact skills are incredible here. Luis Lara hits the ball. He makes contact. 83% contact, 90% in zone. Those are incredible numbers. And considering he was 18 in full season ball, I'd say those numbers are pretty elite. Obviously, the questions remain with power because he's a smaller guy. How much power does he get to? He's got a smaller frame. The underlying data look pretty decent, I'd say, for the age and for the contact ability. Right now, it's gap-to-gap power. I saw him a couple of games this year in Columbia when they were down here, the Brewers, Carolina, the Mudcats, forgetting for a second of who they were. But he hit all gaps well. He actually posted the EV as high as 110. So I do think there is power potential that he could grow into. Right now, it's easy to project like well below average power. But I think that he could be a 10 to 12 home run bat with an elite hit tool and some speed. Like when I look at this profile, and I hate comps. You guys know that. You've asked me for player comps, and here I am giving one. But he's kind of Steven Kwan-esque with maybe some more power potential. Which, I mean, Steven Kwan is a really solid asset to like. And I think you'd like that one if he turned into something close to Steven Kwan. So I really like what Luis Lara brings to the table here. He's one I'm a big fan of. As is this next guy, Robert Gasser, who I've just been in on for so long at this point. And it feels like we've been waiting forever, but I truly believe that this is the year that Robert Gasser gets his shot and breaks through in the Milwaukee rotation. Robert Gasser is not flashy. He's a high floor arm. He's posted mid to upper threes ERAs for his pretty much his entire career, about a strikeout an inning, respectable walk rates. So he's not that flashy pitching prospect that just jumps off the page at you. But he does throw plenty of strikes. He locates every pitch well. The four seam, interestingly enough, had the highest ball rate. So he threw the four seam for the least amount of strikes as any of his 6 pitches. And yes, he does have 6 pitches. Last year, he used all 6 of those pitches at least 10% of the time. Obviously leads with the four seam, used it about 30% of the time, 92 to 93 on average, generated a decent swing and strike rate with it, actually. He throws a two seam in that similar velo band, but a different movement pattern, which I think is huge. He added a cutter, which was actually the second most used pitch of his arsenal last year. The sinker averaged about 16 inches of horizontal break, giving it a pretty nice shape differential. The changeup has decent shape, but there's just not enough separation between the fastball and the changeup here. Just the velo separation is not there. But I believe that the best secondary in this arsenal for Robert Gasser is the slider. It's definitely a sweeper here. 19 inches of horizontal movement at times. That's absurdly good. That is a ton of sweeping action. And that's what you get out of Robert Gasser. A lot of pitches mixed. He can pull way back. His curveball's in the upper 70s, low 80s. So he's got several different velocity bands. I just look at Gasser and I think he's such a high floor arm because of the strike throwing, because of the arsenal and the pitch mix. Like he sequences well. He does everything that you want to see in a pitcher. And now I think we get that shot. Brandon Woodruff's out. Corbin Burns is gone. I think Robert Gasser throws 120 to 140 innings with the Brewers rotation this year. And that could provide a ton of value for you in Dynasty. Now, let's talk DL Hall, because I think Hall is a notable one to talk about because he was kind of on the reliever track in Baltimore. I actually think they were pretty comfortable with him in a reliever role. I mean, the stuff's big. The walk rate's pretty big too. But when you look at DL Hall, I looked at him and I said, okay, this is going to be a guy that ultimately is slotted in the back of a bullpen. He was going to be a high leverage guy in Baltimore. But this trade really leads me to believe that the Brewers want to develop him as a starter. I don't think you make this trade with moving an asset like Corbin Burns. I understand he had a year left, so not a ton of just leverage there in the deal. I don't think you trade for DL Hall and immediately just think, okay, this is going to be a bullpen type guy. I just don't believe that at all. I mean, you look, in the fastball's elite. I mean, the fastball averaged 95, 96, so like closer to 96 there when we're looking at the velo is 95.6. So it has decent characteristics to it as well. When I'm looking at like the underlying data on the pitch, I'd say it's a plus pitch. I mean, I really like the fastball, and I'm interested to see like what can Milwaukee do with it, because we've seen them kind of translate and do some things with arms. They've tweaked some things here and there, which is a lot of fun. But when I look at DL Hall now, I'm certainly believing that it's possible that he could be a starter and get starter run this year. Fastball is really good, as I mentioned. It's routinely been in the upper 90s at times. Like, that's pretty substantial. Gets some good arm side run. 16 inches of IVB is probably closer to average. Look at the changeup. I mean, I think the changeup's a pretty good pitch too. It's got a ton of fading action to it. It's 15 plus inches of fade consistently. Had a huge swinging strike rate on the highest of any pitch last year, actually, at 21.7%. That's a very high swinging strike rate. He's developed this pitch a little bit later in his career, but it's been a really, really good pitch. The slider, I think the slider's plus or better. It's a really good offering too. When you look at it, it has some sweeping action. It gets a little ride too. When you think of a riding fastball, obviously you think of something up in the zone, but we often want to see a slider kind of get some more depth to it. But actually, when you can throw a slider and it have some higher IVB numbers for a slider, I actually don't think it's so bad because it's such a different look than hitters are used to. And this is what DL Hall is going to do. He's going to give you a different look with the slider, the curve. He's going to throw it with a ton of downward movement, but also sweep. He gets similar horizontal movement on both the slider and the curve, but the curve, it just drops off the board. I mean, negative 10.6 inches of IVB, which translates to something like 55 to 60 inches of horizontal drop. So huge numbers there. I actually believe that 4 pitches in this arsenal are plus, which is pretty dang good. The question just is, what is he? Can he throw enough strikes to remain a starting pitcher? And I really hope so, because I do think Hall can be a really fun starter. I think the Brewers could unlock something here. He threw strikes at just a 58.8% clip last year. The league average strike rate's about 63%. The walk rate was close to 14%, as I mentioned. So there's going to have to be some work done. But if he gets it down to 10%, DL Hall is going to be an electric starter. And, I had kind of faded him because in like my overall prospect rankings, and you guys know that, like I faded him because looking at this pitch, it's like, okay. I mean, look at everything, and he's going to be a reliever. And I don't rank relievers very highly in Dynasty. But if he's a starter, I'm bumping him back up significantly. I'm making that correction. We have a question about the IVB and the VAA on those pitches. So the IVB on the 4-seam last year was 15.7, so right at 16 inches. The VAA was negative 4.82, which is actually a really good number. That's a very low VAA, which you want to see out of a 4-seam. So it kind of allows it to play up. While the IVB number is not like overly high, it is because of the approach angle, I think it really allows it with the velo to play up significantly. So that's DL Hall. I think he's going to get run as a starter consistently, which I'm curious to see what the Brewers can do with him. It'll be rather interesting. I really like Hall's arsenal. It's just the command ability. There's a lot of fun names in the system. Let's keep rolling through them because we've gone 34 minutes, only hit a couple of names. Luke Adams. When you watch Luke Adams, he is the most unconventional setup and swing that you can probably see. It's just weird. And I don't like it. I don't like watching him hit a baseball. It concerns me. But you cannot deny the data on Luke Adams. He's 6'4". He's got a really strong frame. He last year hit 11 home runs, had 32 extra base hits in 99 single A games. He did slash 233, 400, 401, which is really weird to look at. 233, 400, 401. So not hitting for average, high OBP, and very low slug. But 9th percentile EV was north of 105 miles an hour last year. That's pretty substantial. As I mentioned, the MLB average for 9th percentile is 103.5. It's already above average there. He made an overall contact rate of 77% and 83% in zone. Those are pretty good. Chase rate below 20%. Last year, when you put all those metrics together, that 9th percentile of 105, the chase rate below 20%, and the contact rate of 77%. Only 2 other minor leaguers did it, Wyatt Langford and Edouard Julien. I know Julien played some time in the majors too. The swing is funky. There are questions about how it'll play against advanced pitching. It's kind of a wait and see approach. This guy, I think, is going to soar up boards. Not Luke Adams. It's Cooper Pratt, who I absolutely love. We had a question about him in the chat too. Of course, we're going to get to Cooper Pratt because he is one of my favorite players to talk about, one of my favorite players to draft in an FYPD. He has a big athletic frame. He's 6'4", 195 with a ton of bat speed. He's a very good athlete, posts really solid run times while showing a good feel for contact. The power, I think, is going to be the carrying tool for Cooper Pratt, but he's shown a really good feel for the barrel. He's put up some really good exit velocities. Scouts have raved about the work ethic here and how much he stands out in in-person looks. Fortunately, I have not gotten that yet, but I will this year. I will make every point to see Cooper Pratt. We'll make sure that happens. I am a true believer in Cooper Pratt. And since he debuted, He was very impressive at the complex level. I know he was a 6th rounder, but he got 4 times over the slot value. So that shows you how much the Brewers like him. They had already worked this deal out ahead of time. And while it was a small sample, he dominated in pro ball. 12 games, 356, 426, 444. I think you're looking at a potential 25 home run bat that can steal you bases, like 5 to 10 bases, that can hit for a decent average and post a good OBP. So I'm a little more conservative on my ranking in the system of Cooper Pratt until I see him live or at least in full season ball on video. But man, like this is a clear first round talent, as Vinny down on the farm mentions. There's no doubt about that. He was a first round talent for sure. And I think he's going to soar up boards this year. A little water break there. Podcasting by yourself is hard. Side note, but doing it with Eric all the time, it's easy because I have little breaks. But talking consecutively, whew. All right, let's keep going. And somebody that you all want to hear about. My next guy is Yofri Rodriguez, the Yof man. He is something special. He was the highest paid international signee in 2023, $1.5 million bonus. The results translated. He got the big bonus and he performed in the DSL. 253, 393, 449, 6 home runs and 21 extra base hits. It's like, okay, this is all right. Not bad for a 17-year-old, but there's a ton of athleticism. And with a few tweaks in the swing, like he's going to be on a rocket ship up rankings. The contact skills were incredible. 80% overall, 85% in zone. And I know that's the DSL, and I know there's a lot of non-competitive pitches in the DSL. So I could probably just stand in the box and take a bunch of walks in the DSL. Just because I mean, just being honest, you're going to face some pitchers that don't throw a lot of strikes. But he chased at just a 15% clip. So he knew the strike zone well, and he didn't chase. That was the upper tier of all DSL hitters and firmly plus or better among all minor leaguers while being 17. I do think there's a little bit to be desired in the power department, but he had a 101 mile an hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. And I hope you checked out Jeff Pont's article this morning because it was a really good article talking about power by age. So when you look at power by age, what's most important? Well, you obviously want to stand out for your age. And Yofri Rodriguez was 17 years old. The average 9th percentile exit velocity for 17-year-olds was 96.5 miles an hour. And Yofri came in at 100.7, so round up to 101. So he ranked really well among his peers in this department. So I think that there's room for more power. The 86.5 mile an hour average exit velocity was also pretty good. The swing is a little flat, which I think is something that can be addressed. I listened to the Brewers, one of the Brewers hitting development director, I think it was, with Arm Layton on Just Baseball on the call-up show. And I just firmly believe that they're going to work with Yofri, get this swing right, and he's going to be a monster. He's got a little bit of speed. He's going to have power. The contact skill is really good. I'm very excited to see Yofri Rodriguez in full season ball, probably at the complex to start the year, and hopefully in single A by the end of the year, I can catch him in Carolina. I'm quite excited about this profile. He's one, and the Brewers have a lot of these guys that I think are on rocket ships up the system. There's a couple of pitchers that we need to talk about. Carlos F. Rodriguez, 6th rounder in 2021 out of Florida Southwestern State College. Guarantee most of you couldn't tell me where that is because I have no clue where that is. We're not talking the University of Florida, Florida Southwestern State. I don't know, but he came out and he has not looked like a 6th rounder. He has performed really, really well. In 2023, 2.88 ERA across 128 innings, 158 strikeouts, and 57 walks. The fastball is interesting. It fluctuates a little bit. Some starts he throws more four seams, some he throws more sinkers. It can sit anywhere between 90 and 95. The changeup is the bread and butter here. It's comfortably a plus pitch, 17 inches of fading action at times, sometimes even more, sitting in the mid-80s. Good enough velo separation between the two to really like what he offers. I look at Carlos Rodriguez. I see the slider sitting in the mid-80s or near 80 miles an hour, the mid-70s curveball. Doesn't use it as often. Throws a cutter on occasion. I think the cutter is a good blend between the fastball and slider. He is smaller. He's listed at 6 foot. I'm not sure he's quite 6 foot, but he's got a really solid build. I think he could handle a starter's workload. But the interesting thing and the question mark is going to be the strike throwing ability. The strike rate was 60%, so below average. The walk rate was manageable. So we'll see how that works out. I do think he could be a really good bullpen arm, but I think there's also a potential starter here, maybe a SP4 or 5 type. So I'll be curious to follow what Carlos F. Rodriguez does. Here's my next pitcher, who I also think is going to be on a rocket ship this year. And if you're hearing all this, the Brewers drafted really, really well this year. Brewers might have had my favorite draft of anyone this summer. Josh Noth. He was 17 at the time of the draft. Big stuff with the Arsenal. I think the slider might have been one of the best sliders in the draft. 2-plane pitch, mid-80s, ton of spin, like consistently 3,000 RPM or more. Like, think Jackson Jobe spin rates on the slider. Jackson Jobe has a really nasty slider. So when you look at that, okay, the slider looks really good. The fastball, I think, has a lot of potential. It ranged anywhere from 93 to 96 as a prep. And good luck if you're a high schooler facing Josh Noth. I mean, tag-um. Topped out at 98. The IVB numbers are really, really good. It plays up well at the top of the zone. He throws a curveball on occasion. Flashes plus, in my opinion. It's distinct pitch to the slider. Has not used a changeup often because who needs a changeup in high school when you're throwing that good of a fastball slider combo? So dominant. Scouts have talked pretty highly of this changeup and the development of it. So I'll trust those people that I've talked to that they believe that Noth could have 4 pitches. I think that 2024 is going to present a good opportunity for him to fly up prospect circles. He's going to move up rankings significantly. The Arsenal has a ton of upside. I think he's a household name by midseason 2024. I think your average prospect person probably, or your average just like baseball fan probably isn't very familiar with Josh Noth, but they will be. Count on that. Josh Noth moving on up. Kind of the opposite of Josh Noth is Logan Henderson, who is really loved in our Discord. If you're in the Dynasty Dugout Discord, there's a lot of talk about Logan Henderson. He's interesting because he's really small. He throws a lot of strikes, and he sits low 90s. Like he set 91.2 last year with the fastball. It is such a weird profile, though, because the IVB numbers he puts up at 91 are such outliers. Like it's a very high IVB pitch considering the velocity. And then you look, he throws a lot of strikes. He had a 35% strikeout rate last year, just an 8% walk rate. He did throw just 78 innings. So you want to see a little more. This is a 4th round selection in 2021 out of McLennan Community College. His stuff is pretty solid in my opinion. And I mentioned the fastball velocity, and there have been reports that he is up even higher this year. When I saw him this year live, or last year live, I guess, I really liked what he brought to the table. My biggest concern was just the fastball. Like 91-mile-an-hour fastballs just don't play at all in the majors. You can't be a starter and sit 91. Let's go look at, if you don't believe me, just go look at the velocity chart on Baseball Savant, and anybody below 91 is just basically washed up starters or non-relevant starters. That's it. You have Adam Wainwright sitting at like 86 and some other starters below that. It's very rare that you see an MLB starter excel below 91, which is why I'm hesitant on guys like that. Like why I'm hesitant on like a Yu-Min Lin type, because he averaged like 89. It's just very worrisome. But aside that point, there have been reports that Henderson's fastball has ticked up this offseason. So I'm really curious to see where it sits in game action. I've only talked the fastball, but the changeups are a really good offering. He gets good velocity separation, a ton of tumble and fading action to it. So the changeup might be it's a 6. It's a 60 grade pitch. Might be a little better than that. It's a really good offering. When the slider's on, I think he's got 3 really good pitches here that work. I do want to see him pitch against high AA hitters before I'm very confident about that. But I do think that he could continue to build stock up and rise up this system. I like Logan Henderson a lot. I think he's still pretty underrated because I still have him borderline like top 200, but I don't think a lot do actually. So That'll be interesting to see what Logan Henderson does this year. Bradley Blaylock, he's really under the radar, but Blaylock, I saw actually a decent bit because he was in Greenville. He was in the Red Sox system, and he was part of the trade that sent Luis Urias to Boston. He was a 32nd rounder in 2019. He passed up on his scholarship offer to Kennesaw State. And after spending 3 years in the Red Sox system, dealing with TJ, all sorts of stuff, this year he looked pretty good. He had 2.82 ERA across 67 innings with 75 strikeouts, just 20 walks. The fastball took a massive leap forward. He's sitting 95, consistently topping out at 98, which is huge. He added a splitter this year, which was nasty. I'll tell you, firsthand, I saw it in person. It was nasty. Sitting 86 to 88, I thought it was a really good offering. So that was something that I was rather impressed with, that it progressed like it did. Blaylock throws a breaking ball in the upper 70s, curveball. He throws a slider in the low to mid 80s with more horizontal. I think that he could rise up boards significantly too, because nobody really talks about Bradley Blaylock, but he's still just 22 years old. He threw strikes at a 65% clip, which is better than average, and he's got a really good arsenal. So I'm pretty intrigued by what Bradley Blaylock can do and bring to the table. Let's get back to a draftee this year. It's Eric Batanti, who is a physically gifted power hitter. The lefty has big-time exit velocities, had some of the best in the prep class last year, but he also moves pretty well for his size. He was one of the younger players in the class last year. He did not turn 18 until November last year. So he spent he was 17 at the draft. He spent all season post-draft at 17. He got a nice overslot deal. He's already got a big frame, but I think there's some projection on it when you look at it. I think there's a 30 home run bat here if all clicks right. The issue is the contact skills. It was a small sample, but he really struggled with contact, struck out at over a 30% clip at lower levels. I think Batanti is really fun to dream on, but I do think that we need to see a little more out of him before I'm confident pushing him up a little higher. As is this next guy, Mike Bovey. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was a big-time contact hitter in college, and there were questions surrounding his power. He has a 6'2", 210 build. He has simple swing. He generates easy bat speed, which is a lot of fun. There's good barrel control. He hits the ball where it's pitched. And last year in college, had an 87% contact rate and a 92% end zone contact rate. Low chase rates, just 17%. The exit velocities were the question, as I said. He gets drafted. What does he do? He hit 5 home runs in 28 pro games and had a ton of EVs over 100 with wood. I'm confused about the profile and what he's going to be, but at least he showed the ability to hit for power, because that certainly will play. Now, we had a question from Wyatt Wheeler. He says, will Mike Bovey be the next Tyler Black? I mean, it's an interesting profile, I think. I mean, you look at it, it's not that dissimilar. Contact, OBP, some sneaky pop maybe, some decent speed for the size. Like, he's a pretty fun profile. Eric Cross popped in to say Brock Wilken is a beast. Absolutely right. He is a beast. If you missed our talk earlier, yeah, we just raved about what he can do. Brock Wilken's going to be in for a big year. And let's bank this. I think Brock Wilken makes the majors this year. Just go ahead and say it. I think he's with the Brewers by the end of the year. He made it to AA last year. No reason not to be. Man, this Brewer system has a lot of names. Eric Brown Jr., who we saw in the AFL. We interviewed him. He's a lot of fun. Coastal Carolina boy, so I saw him down here a little bit in college. He had a massive career at Coastal. While a funky swing, funky setup, all that stuff, like, he made it work in college. And it is a smaller build. Like, he's 5'10", 190. I think I have some footage of him I'll put up of him mashing we saw 3 or 4 home runs in a week in the AFL. So that was pretty fun to see him do that. But he smoked this ball. Like, I don't remember the numbers exactly on it, but man, he had a big home run one game. He had another home run in Fall Stars. He was just really fun to watch. Let me pop this video up here for you guys, because he absolutely smoked it off. Kendall Williams, who's a legit Dodgers prospect, actually. Big guy, 6'6", I think, big release point, but Yeah, here's some good action of Eric Brown Jr. His stance and swing have quieted down a bit, but here's the pitch, and that thing got out of there in a hurry. He absolutely obliterated that pitch. And you see Kendall just don't like that. I think there may be an open face video, the dim lights, which is cool. I like that effect that they had there in that stadium that for Eric Brown's home run. If I have the open face, if I don't, it's on the other video. Let me pull up the other one from Fall Stars. But yeah, you look at Eric Brown Jr., I think that he's good enough at short, but he probably moves to second base. Probably his most natural fit. Last year, the power was what was disappointing. He had an 84.5 mile an hour average EV and a ninth percentile of 100. So not really great there. The contact skills were good. 82% overall and 90% in zone, which is huge. This is from Fall Stars that I'll pop up. This was a view from every angle. We had all the cameras set up. So you get a view from behind of this home run and then also from open face and behind. This was Logan Workman, who actually I liked. Workman was a pretty fun arm, but he smokes that one. Here's the open face. That is such an interesting stance, and that's toned down from what it was. In college, it was a wild stance, but you see there, he's very, very narrow, takes a leg kick. The bat moves a lot, but he still gets to contact. I mean, that's a lot of moving parts in the swing, but to put up a 90% in zone and an 82% overall is pretty huge. I think that Eric Brown Jr. rebuilds some of his stock this year, and we see him ultimately move back up prospect stats. Because he was, at least in my book, he was somebody that I really liked coming out of college. Obviously, some bias that I'd seen him a lot, but I think he bounces back. Wes Clark, another South Carolina boy. Man, they're loaded with South Carolina boys in the system. Wes Clark can mash. I actually picked him to win the Fall Stars Home Run Derby. And I was a little disappointed when he didn't, because I really thought that there was a chance that Wes Clark would. He had a really good college career. I loved watching him at South Carolina. Obviously, a lot of fun when he's on the team that you grew up rooting for. But Wes Clark has done a lot of good things in pro ball, too. And I really thought he was going to have a chance for some at-bats this year in Milwaukee. But the signing of Rhys Hoskins kind of put that to bed. In the fall league last year, he had some good success, 297, 435, 568 with 5 home runs. There's big power, huge exit velocities. The contact's the question. 66% contact last year. He kind of teeters on like a 3 true outcome type, or he's going to walk, he's going to strike out, or he's going to hit for power. Kind of no in between, but I think that he could be like a 250 type hitter and ultimately maybe hit 25 plus home runs. I think that that's certainly the case with Wes Clark. So I like the profile a lot with Clark. He'll be a fun one to follow. There's a couple other names just to hit on real quick. And these are some younger guys. And I hope I'm saying this right. Filippo Dituri, who I thought was an interesting pop-up. He was landed a $1.3 million bonus. It's just not a true pop-up. Switch hitter, good feel for the strike zone from both sides in the DSL. Had a 17% walk rate, a 14% strikeout rate, /282, 414, 354. So right now, I think the power is more like gap to gap, like a lot of kind of doubles power. But again, he's so young, so there's always the chance that he grows and gets some more power. I don't see why that's not a possibility. So he's a name to keep an eye on. Looking at a couple other names that I like too in the system. You have Jace Avina, who he's a masher. He's an interesting profile, I think kind of under the radar. He's very aggressive. He strikes out at high clips, but did some good things that I like a little bit there. You have Daniel Giarte, 20-year-old infielder. You have Dylan O'Ray, a 19-year-old versatile second base outfield type who is a lot of fun. Oliver Dunn, who was traded over. He was in the Phillies org when he was in the in the AFL last year. When we saw him, Oliver Dunn was a lot of fun. Smaller, but he played with a high intensity, played a lot bigger than his body kind of suggested. 2023, hit 21 homers, stole 16 bags, 271, 396, 506. So he flew a lot under the radar, but he impressed me a lot. So he's now part of the system. Ernesto Martinez is kind of an older first baseman to keep an eye on, but one that kind of caught my eye a little bit when watching film and kind of studying for the Brewers system. You have Anthony Flores, a 19-year-old left-handed pitcher. Eniel Cortez, a 17-year-old right-handed pitcher. Those are all a lot of fun too. So those are guys that I'm keeping an eye on here. Man, this system is a ton of fun. I'm tired, but I just want to talk about these guys. And the Brewers have a lot of fun names. And I know that right now they're not putting the best product on the major league field, and that's okay. I hope that the Brewers will excel this year and have a really good farm system. So I'll answer any questions if you're hanging around about any players, about any Brewers prospects that maybe I didn't discuss that you would like discussed. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you guys. But man, this system is a lot of fun. And thank you for hanging out with me on a Friday afternoon where there's a spring training game going on. The last I saw, Northeastern was leading Boston 1-0, which is interesting. I know the Red Sox put out a minor league team on the field, so it's okay. Let's see what the score is now. It's currently 1-1, bottom of the third. I know Mike Sirota walked in his first at bat, and then he scored. And the last at bat, let's see what he did. I did not see that then. He flew out to right field. So this is what I was watching for, was Mike Sirota, who is an outfielder, center fielder from Northeastern University. He's going to be a top 10 pick this summer, most likely. My man Sam jumped in. He might have missed it. Logan Henderson thoughts. Yeah, we hit on Logan Henderson. I love Logan Henderson personally. He's like a top 200 prospect for me with room to really jump up. So I think that the biggest sticking point is the fastball. He averaged 91.2 last year. There's reports that he's ticked up a couple miles per hour this offseason, which would be huge. There's big ride on the fastball already. I think a 60 grade changeup or better, like 17 inches of fading action, which is huge. So that's one that I think when the slider's on is 3 pitches, very good command and strike throwing ability. Really like Logan Henderson. So yeah, if you want to go check out, I probably talked more in depth about him earlier in the show, probably about the halfway point. It'll be on YouTube and in podcast form soon. Cooper Pratt, also Billy McMahon asked, talked a lot in depth about him, but yeah, he's big power, very athletic. I think there's going to be high OBP skills, good contact as well. So I love Cooper Pratt. I think he's on a helium rocket this year if he performs, or he's going to soar up boards. And then we have one more question about Tyler Black. How many major league at-bats this year? That's a great question. I would have been confident saying like 300 before kind of this move with Joey Ortiz and the signing of Rhys Hoskins. I'm not ruling that out, but I'm more comfortable saying 200 to 250 is more reasonable. But that could all change really quickly if we see a trade, which I hope they trade Willy Adames. I think that would make sense. So we'll see what they do there. Happy to answer any other questions if you want to pop in. I can see, Wyatt says I can see Batanti winding up as a first baseman if he adds weight. Yeah, absolutely. He's already a big frame. I think there's going to be questions about where he fits in the field. I absolutely think that that's a realistic spot for him to land, would be at first base. Thank you again, guys. I appreciate you hanging out. If you missed some of the show, you can go back and catch up. It'll be on the YouTube channel. And again, if you ever have any questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to answer them. I know I've been saying it, but I think the podcast form will be ready. I've got all the work done for the audio. I've got the graphic. I think it's almost done. I have somebody working on that. And we've got everything set up on the hosting site. So these will be in podcast form soon. So you can go back and listen. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of your support more than you know. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Friday and a great weekend. And I'm going to leave you with this. Be kind to one another. Show kindness to everyone. Have a good day, guys.